One of the four purposes of life is to walk on the path of liberation or moksha. This is a sacred path walked by many seekers throughout time. They have illuminated by the wisdom of the great sages. This is a path that requires deep introspection, unwavering commitment, and a heightened willingness, all that is transient in pursuit of the eternal. To discover the true self, one must first cultivate a complete detachment from all that is impermanent and fleeting in nature. The wise declare this to be the first and foremost step. For as long as the mind is bound to the transient duality or pleasures and pains of the world, the vision of the eternal remains obscured and covered with maya or illusion or avidya. The true meaning of detachment is not mere renunciation of external possessions, like it may be materialistic or non materialistic, but an inner renunciation where the recognition that nothing in the material world holds lasting fulfillment. It is the realization of the truth that all beings, perceived by the senses, organendriyas, and mind, all attachments to name and form, are but passing clouds in the vast sky of existence. Once detachment has been firmly established, the seeker must diligently cultivate certain inner virtues. These are tranquility, self control, and forbearance. Tranquility or inner peace arises when the mental activities or vrittis ceases and settles into stillness. It is the natural state of one who is no longer agitated by desires, fears, anger, lust, or worldly distractions. Self control or brahmacharya, one of important yamas of Ashtanga Yoga. It is the mastery over one's impulses and emotions, ensures that the seeker does not become ensnared by fleeting temptations or fall into habitual patterns dictated by past conditioning. Forbearance or patience, endurance through surrendering to the higher consciousness strengthens the mind against suffering and hardship, allowing the seeker to remain steadfast on the path despite obstacles. These qualities serve as the foundation upon which higher wisdom is built. As we can understand that why this path is not only for sadhak or seekers of truth, but also for who are facing modern life crisis. Following the establishment of these virtues, the next step is the complete relinquishment of all actions driven by personal selfish desire. Actions performed with expectations, with the longing for personal gain or recognition, only serve to reinforce the illusion of individuality and separation from the divine. Selfless actions are encouraged by the Krishna. He always indicates us to walk the path of realization because when such motives are abandoned, actions become offerings, mere expressions of the divine will. We will be free from the bondage of karma. In this way, we, the seekers, gradually dissolve the false sense of doership and begins to act with a sense of surrender to the higher reality. Now, this led to the ground of the mind and heart. The disciple must then embrace the higher consciousness in order to merge with the real self, the Atman. This begins with the earnest listening to the teachings of the sages, who impart the sacred knowledge of the self's true nature. Merely hearing these words is not enough. One must reflect deeply upon them. This involves questioning the teachings, contemplating their meaning, and carefully examining how they apply to one's own experience. Nidhi Dhyasana is a deep, unwavering meditation on the truth of the self or Atma as taught in Advaita Vedanta. It is the final stage of self inquiry, following Shravana, listening to the teachings, and Manana, contemplation and reflection. In this stage, the seeker no longer engages in intellectual analysis, but rather abides in the direct experience of the self, eliminating all residual doubts and mental distractions. This practice requires turning attention inward, away from distractions and fleeting thoughts. It is not about forcibly controlling the mind, but rather gently bringing it back again and again to the awareness of I am. As these practice deepens, the mental tendencies or vasanas that keep one bound to the illusion of separation gradually lose their grip. The sense of individuality, which arises from identification with the body and mind, begins to dissolve, revealing the undivided, ever present reality of the self. However, this realization does not happen instantly. It demands unwavering dedication, patience, and perseverance. The more one abides in this awareness, the more the veil of ignorance, which is created by false identification with the ego, will be faded away. Eventually, when the practice is sustained over time with sincerity and devotion, the truth reveals itself spontaneously as the radiant, unchanging reality that has always been present. In this high state of realization, the duality of subject and object disappears. No longer does one perceive themselves as a separate being interacting with an external world. Instead, all distinctions dissolve, leaving only the boundless, indivisible consciousness, pure, infinite, and self luminous. In this state, the wise one experiences the supreme bliss of freedom, the liberation from all bondage, while still residing within the physical body. This is the pinnacle of spiritual attainment, where one abides in the infinite peace or bliss, untouched by the fluctuations of existential changing circumstances. Realizing this state of consciousness may seem like an unimaginable phenomenon, as what we are trying to grasp through words is ultimately a matter of direct experience. To attain this experience, one must undertake the process of discrimination between the Atma, the eternal self, and the non Atma, that which is impermanent and illusory. This discernment serves as a gateway to liberation, enabling the seeker to distinguish between the unchanging essence and the fleeting appearance that arise and pass away. Listen carefully, for this knowledge is not meant to be merely intellectual. It must be realized directly within the depths of our own being. If the Atma is eternal and beyond suffering, is physical pain and illness meaningless? The physical body, often mistaken for the self, is made up of various elements such as marrow, bone, fat, flesh, blood, skin, and the outer epidermis. It is structured with limbs, a torso, a head, and other parts. This body undergoes continuous change. It is born, grows, decays, and eventually dissolves. Because of this, it becomes the foundation of the illusion of individuality. People falsely identify with it, believing in the notion of I and mine, which are rooted in impermanence. However, the wise understand that the body is merely an instrument, a temporary vessel, and not the true self. To overcome this illusion, one must look beyond the physical form and seek the eternal, unchanging reality that is the ever radiant Atma. The body is formed from the five gross elements. These are ether, air, fire, water, and earth, which combine in different proportions. These elements allow for sensory experiences such as sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell. However, these experiences arise only to be perceived by the individual soul, which, due to ignorance, remains entangled in the illusion of duality. The physical body serves as a medium for the Atma to experience the pleasure and pain shaped by past karma. This interaction with the external world occurs in the waking state of consciousness, where the mind and senses engage with worldly objects, forming the perception of reality. It led to bound by the cycle of birth, growth, decay, and death. The body constantly changes. It moves through different stages. These are childhood, youth, adulthood, and old age, while being affected by health and illness, strength and weakness, honor and dishonor. Social structures such as caste, duties, and life stages, varnashram, further bind it to external conventions, reinforcing the illusion of separateness. Ultimately, the physical body is impermanent and ever changing, but the Atma, the true self, remains beyond all limitations. By recognizing this truth, one can transcend the illusion of individuality and realize the eternal, unchanging essence that is beyond birth and death and diseases. Beyond the gross body lies the subtle body, which is far more intricate and fundamental in shaping human experience. The subtle body consists of eight groups: five organs of perception, five organs of action, five functions of the vital force, five subtle elements, and the mental organ, alongside the forces of ignorance, desire, and karma. Unlike the gross body, which is composed of elements in their compounded form, the subtle body arises from the subtle elements before they have undergone this five-fold combination. It is the field where the fruits of karma manifest, and also the seat of our deep-seated desires, emotions, and tendencies. The subtle body has been superimposed upon the Atma since time immemorial due to the veiling power of ignorance, leading the individual to mistakenly identify with the ephemeral aspects of existence rather than recognizing the eternal self. The dream state, as opposed to waking state, belongs predominantly to the subtle body. In dreams, the gross physical senses are inactive, yet experiences continue through the impressions stored in the subtle body. The organs of perceptions, these are ears, skin, eyes, nose, and tongue. They serve as a means through which sensory information is received, while the organs of action, karmendriya, these are speech, hands, feet, and the faculties of excretion and reproduction. They function as instruments of interaction with the external world. It is through these faculties that one becomes involved in action, accumulating further karmic bondage. At the core of the subtle body is the mental organ, which comprises the mind, manas, intellect or buddhi, ego, ahankara, and emotional nature, that is chitta. Each aspect of the mental organ plays a distinct role, such as the mind engages in deliberation, weighing different possibilities. The intellect determines the true nature of an object through discernment. The ego arises when the mind identifies itself with the physical and subtle bodies, generating a sense of individuality, and the emotional nature stores past impressions, shaping desires and tendencies. The mind is the instrument through which all experiences are processed, and its uncontrolled activity is the main cause of bondage to the cycle of birth and death. What then is the destiny of one who remains captivated by the play of the senses, unable to extricate himself from their influence? The allure of sensory objects is far more perilous than the venom of a cobra, for while poison destroys the body only upon direct contact, the mere sight of tempting worldly pleasures is enough to ensnare the mind and lead one farther into delusion. It indicates the attraction to sensory pleasures is more dangerous than a cobra's poison. Poison harms only when it comes into contact with the body, but even just seeing tempting worldly pleasures can trap the mind and deepen delusion. No matter how much a person studies spiritual teachings or well versed in the Sikh system of philosophy, they cannot attain true freedom if they are still attached to worldly pleasures. Liberation is not just about gaining knowledge, it requires letting go of desires and attachments. Without true detachment, all intellectual understanding remains just an illusion and does not lead to real inner freedom. There are those who claim to seek liberation yet lack the sincere spirit of renunciation. They attempt to cross the vast ocean of worldly existence but are ultimately ensnared by the treacherous force of craving, like a mighty shark that seizes its prey and drags it into the depths of the ocean. Desire grapes the mind and pulls it away from the path of truth, drowning the seeker in the endless currents of worldly attachment. Only someone who has freed themselves from the strong trap of desire, which is hard to escape, is truly ready for the path to true freedom from life's struggles. Without letting go of attachments, the spiritual journey remains incomplete. The seeker remains stuck in the cycle of birth and rebirth, unable to experience the infinite bliss of the true self. True freedom comes only when one renounces worldly cravings and focuses fully on self realization. Can true dispassion alone help one overcome the endless pull of desires and reach freedom? Or is knowledge equally essential? He who has slain the formidable shark of sense craving with the sword of true dispassion traverses the boundless ocean of worldly existence without encountering any hindrance. Those who conquer their desires with true detachment can move through life without obstacles. Freed from the endless pull of worldly cravings, they smoothly progress toward liberation, untouched by the illusions that trap others in suffering and ignorance. The subtle body, like a well crafted tool in the hands of a skilled carpenter, is simply an instrument used by the Atma, the true self. Just as a tool is separate from its user, the subtle body is only a means of activity, while the Atma remains ever pure and free. The Atma is infinite wisdom, shining by its own light, untouched by the flaws or qualities of the body and mind. For example, blindness, weakness, or sharp vision belong to the eyes alone. They are not qualities of the self. Similarly, Deafness or muteness are conditions of the ears and tongue, not of the Atma, which is the eternal witness, beyond all limitations. Those who truly understand this teaching no longer identify with the temporary ups and downs of life. Instead, they abide in the awareness of their true nature, free from illusion of transient outcomes. This is the ultimate purpose of spiritual teachings, is to recognize who we truly are beyond the ever-changing physical and mental experience, the eternal witness. The self is beyond all attributes and limitations, unaffected by the fluctuations of the physical and subtle instruments through which it experiences the world. Maya, the cosmic illusion, is constituted by the interplay of the three gunas, sattva or purity, rajas or activity, and tamas, inertia. This illusion forms the causal body of the Atma, veiling its true nature. The state of dreamless sleep belongs preeminently to the causal body, for in this state, the activities of the mind and most subtle form, like a dormant seed, retaining the potential to sprout again upon waking. This is evident in the universal human experience. When waking from deep sleep, one recalls, I knew nothing. This recollection affirms the existence of the mind, even in a seemingly unconscious state. The physical body, the senses, the vital force, the mind, the ego, and all their respective functions, along with the objects of sensory enjoyment, the experiences of pleasure and pain, the entirety of the gross and subtle elements. These constitute the phenomenal world. All of these arise from Maya, the primal illusion. We serve as their cause. However, none of these is the Atma. The Atma is ever distinct, beyond name and form, beyond all conditions and limitations. Worldly pleasures are equivalent to deadly poisons, and virtues are to the nectar of immortality. Just as one would avoid poison to protect their life, one should stay away from temporary sensory pleasures that lead to attachment and suffering. Instead, true contentment comes from cultivating inner qualities like contentment, compassion, forgiveness, honesty, peace, and self discipline. These virtues nourish the soul and lead to true happiness and freedom. Just as nectar is believed to grant immortality, by choosing wisdom and self mastery over fleeting desires, one walks the path of truly living the human life with full potential. A wise person must constantly strive to free themselves from the deep rooted ignorance that keeps them trapped in suffering. This ignorance, which has existed since time immemorial, creates the illusion of separateness and prevents one from realizing their true nature. Yet, in daily life, most people remain engrossed in chasing material pleasures and external validation, neglecting the deeper purpose of self discovery. This is a form of self sabotage, wasting the rare gift of human life on temporary desires rather than seeking true fulfillment. No external force, neither weapons, wind, fire, nor even good deeds, can break the chains of ignorance. Only the sharp sword of true knowledge, forged through deep self inquiry and refined by a pure heart, can cut through these illusions. However, in modern life, we often prioritize everything except our inner growth. We invest in careers, relationships, and social status, yet rarely take time to understand who we truly are beyond these roles. As a result, stress, anxiety, and dissatisfaction persist, keeping us trapped in a cycle of mental and emotional suffering. To overcome this, one must engage in self reflection and practice the wisdom taught by spiritual traditions. When done with sincerity, selfless actions, and inner discipline help purify the mind, making it ready to receive higher truths. A mind free from distraction and attachment becomes capable of realizing the deeper self, the source of lasting peace and fulfillment. By making inner awareness a priority, one gradually transcends the endless cycle of desires, struggles, and suffering. The realized person no longer seeks happiness outside but finds it within, beyond the changing conditions of life. Anchored in this truth, they become free from fear, anxiety, and limitations, living with clarity, peace, and unwavering inner strength. True liberation is not just about escaping suffering, but about reclaiming the unshakable joy and wisdom that already exists within. Live always in the knowledge of identity with Brahman and be blessed.